Folks, welcome back to part 3 of Project Poor Man here on the Wanneroo channel. And make sure that you all, for one thing, is hit the like button, make sure you subscribe, leave a comment, all that stuff really helps the channel out. And also check out my Amazon store down below. I've got a link for it down there. So we finished basically all of our brass prep, and you can see I've got a whole mess of reloading manuals and stuff out here on the table. And so this is kind of the time now where I have to figure out what load I'm going to use. Now, if you are just getting started reloading, you don't have to kind of spaz out about a lot of this in terms of, you know, having to run out and buy every frickin', reloading manual out there. It is nice to have a wide selection of reloading manuals and different things. And even Hogden here, they publish their annual manual that is on newsstands in magazine format, where they've got articles, and then they have a bunch of load data at the end, which is fairly comprehensive. And usually what I suggest to folks is that, like, let's say if you're using Hornady bullets a lot, well, then just go ahead and get the Hornady manual, and that at least gives you some starting point to go by. That's another thing to kind of keep in mind too. With a lot of this data and stuff, it's just a starting point. It's someone else's data. And it's like I always tell you guys when I do these reloading videos, these are not how-to videos. They are videos where you're watching me go through the process of doing it, and you're getting to see that. But me, I'm just one of however many other people out there. You have to use, basically the kind of a process to figure out what you're going to do and how you're going to tailor things to your firearm or whatever, because my circumstances might not be yours. So that's something to always keep in mind with all this data. And as I'm going to show you here in a minute, there's all sorts of kind of conflicting data out there too. Personally, in my own opinion, and this is just my opinion, the Hornady manual is one of the more conservative manuals in terms of their loads. Oftentimes when you find a load in the Hornady manual, sometimes it'll be much lower than other manuals might show. So you have to kind of weigh that up. And I'll tell you, also once you gain a bit of experience too, they always say start low, work your way up. A lot of times if it's a very established cartridge and it's a very established load that's in many manuals and you kind of come up with something kind of in the middle, usually there's not that much variation where it's going to be too crazy. So there is some variation, but we just have to, or I have to basically pick out what's going to work best. So here in the Hornady manual, which is the bullet that we're using right here, the 230 grain full metal jacket bullet, they have an overall length listed of 1.25. And typically for 230 grain bullets, that's what I've been using now for 10 years. Is I use that overall length. I believe the 1.25, that even goes way back to World War II. That's how they loaded 230 grain bullets back in World War II and stuff. That's what I've read, and that's what I've been told. They have a bunch of load data here, and they're showing between 4.3 grains and 4.8 grains as the max load. So we can kind of take that on board as kind of a data point there. Then the next thing that I discovered in the 2024 Hogden Reloading Manual is in their 230 grain Hornady full metal jacket. They have a different overall length listed of 1.2, and the powder charge that they list is the starting load of 4.4 and the max load of 4.8. Now, also, too, I want to remind you all with Titegroup, and this is one thing for new reloaders especially to keep an eye on, is Titegroup is what they call a low charge weight. It's kind of a powder that's not like big and fluffy. So it's a thing where it doesn't fill up the case, and as a result, it is easy to double load it, and you do not want that to happen. If that happens, you're going to get a big boom. Or it's not going to be very pleasant for your firearm. So you must have that awareness there whenever you're loading Titegroup, that you do not double charge a case. And that is why it is essential when you are reloading that you have to pay attention to what you're doing. because there's some folks out there that can get a little bit careless. Then we can check in here in the Lee manual. The Lee manual typically has a lot of data. I think they collect it from different sources or whatever. But pretty much what they came up with was pretty much the same thing. 4.4 to start, 4.8 as the top load, and 1.2. And I thought I had another book around here that showed 1.21 overall length. So here again, this is a thing where you've got to kind of look at whatever sources you can get a hold of, whether you get a reloading manual or two, or whether you look it up online, and decide where your starting load is going to be, and also too what's going to work for your firearm. There's some firearms where the overall length, you typically have your max length for the cartridge that SAAMI comes up with, or whatever. That's an established max overall length and stuff, but sometimes there's some firearms, for instance, they might not like a long overall length cartridge and get fussy about it. So you have to keep that in mind, or kind of tailor it to your firearms or whatever. It's one of those things where it's kind of up to you. So I think what I'm going to kind of do with this is I think I'm going to go ahead and just start out with probably because I've loaded this before, I'm pretty confident in how it's going to respond. If you're not sure of anything, then it's always best to start a bit low, but I think I can kind of start kind of in the middle, and I think if I'm at like 4.6, I think I'm going to be just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and start with that, and let's go ahead and go to the bench and get our powder loaded. Okay, folks, now I'm moving on to the powder part of it here. And yes, my workbench, it is a mess, but you guys are going to see we are working on a new YouTube studio, so things are going to be a little bit messy here the next month or two, but we are going to have some new space here shortly for some doing some cool stuff coming up, so watch for that on the channel. And also, you might notice my voice is a little weird, possibly because I have a cold right now, so it just kind of is what it is. But moving on with the powder here. So we have our powder measure here set up, our RCBS powder measure. Now, whenever I did start out, I started out with a Lee perfect powder measure, and that was one of those where it's much smaller than this, and it's quite a bit cheaper at the time. I think I paid $20 for it. Those are still perfectly viable for, I would say, like if you're just doing casual reloading or you're just starting out. Probably, though, as you kind of move through things, you probably want to get a better powder measure as you move up the ranks and all that. And I got rid of that powder measure a while ago, so that has gone bye-bye. And as a result, we don't have it to use today. But so we're going to use our RCBS at one of our reloading benches to do it. But how I'm going to go ahead and do it here is I am going to get my powder dropped. Now, one thing I don't like to do, a lot of reloaders do this, is they get their tray lined up with all their brass, and they go through and they basically just drop powder in one after another. And I found that very easy to kind of get confused in terms of you might miss one or whatever. You have to be very set in your system how you do it. Now, depends on what powder you use also. Some powders, if you double charge a case, you're definitely going to know it. And here's the one problem with Titegroup that you have to watch for, is that it is possible to double charge a case. So how I'm going to do it is I take my case, I put powder in it, and then what I do is I visually inspect the case. I put it in the tray, and then immediately I go ahead and I put my bullet here on top and just have my bullet set like that. So whenever we go to seat the bullet, I am ready to go. So as you remember, we expanded the case in the previous video. So your case should be expanded enough for that bullet's just going to sit there without falling over. So that's the way we're going to work it. And here again, I'm double checking and verifying. And I just want to emphasize that you have a big fat case, this 45 ACP case. Technically, it could hold a fair bit of powder. I don't know off the top of my head how much, and it would depend on the powder too. But I would say definitely with Titegroup you could conceivably double charge a case. So you really do need to pay attention to what you're doing when you're using a powder like this. If you're using kind of a bigger, fluffier powder like Unique would be a good example. And Unique also for, as I recall, the load is about 6 grains. So if you double charge that case, you should notice it. This, not so much. So just be aware. The other thing I'll say to you guys too, and I don't say this lightly or say this as like fear mongering or anything like that, but I don't believe right now that the world is going to get better anytime soon. It's probably going to get worse before it gets better. Past couple years, a lot of crazy stuff has gone on. And if you guys have noticed, powder prices have gone up significantly this year. If you haven't been paying attention, some of you might end up being shocked because some of the rifle powders and stuff, they're asking over $60, up over $70 a pound now. And I don't think things are going to get better. The world's not getting any better. And I think we're going through one of those 20 to 30 year generational kind of shifts where whether it's a technological shift or it's a change in the power, change from generations, change in the politics and different things like that. There's definitely a major shift going on, and there's a lot of bad actors out there also, in my opinion. And so as a result, I think in regards to powder and also components and stuff, I would say right now prices, of course, are high, but some of the stuff is available, and I have my doubts whether some of it, the availability of such is going to continue into the future. So with that said, if you do have the opportunity to go and, let's say, pick up an 8-pound jug, for instance, of Titegroup or something like that, like a pistol powder, for instance, or a rifle powder that's very flexible in different cartridges you can use it in, I would do so. I don't think it's a bad investment. I don't think at the end of the day, as years go down the road, you're going to regret it. I would not go out there like go bananas, and where you have to buy up everything like some of these panics we've had, where people are they're buying on the wrong side of the curve. My opinion is you need to be ahead of the curve. And with inflation right now and the way things are, you are going to pay maybe a premium over what you would a couple years ago. But I don't think it's a bad investment. So, we'll see how things go. But that's just my opinion. And, I would just have that kind of awareness about things. So anyways, we'll go ahead and get these loaded up here. And then we will go ahead and get our Lee hand press back out, get our seating die set up and start seating these. And then we're going to go ahead and then crimp them once we have them all seated. All right, so let's move on to that. All right, folks, so now it is time to go ahead and seat the bullets here. And so we have all our cases with powder and then bullets set on top. Now, going back and looking at all the different recipes and stuff that were available, most of the time with 230 grain bullets, I load at 1.25. So that is one thing that you're going to have to figure out whenever you seat your bullet. You're going to have to decide what your overall length is going to be. And there's other recipes that show the exact same data and powder charge, about 1.20 instead of 1.25. Personally, myself, I have typically loaded these bullets at 1.25. But other data shows it differently. And I went ahead and decided to try that and see what we come up with. I have used Titegroup at 45 before, so I do have a baseline of experience. But went ahead and decided to give it a go. I got down to 1.215, and I went ahead and decided, I think this one is 1.216. I said, I think that's probably good enough. I don't think we need to go any more than that. So you do have to keep in mind that your bullet seating depth there is going to affect possibly pressures and also, too, how the round performs. So, and it's going to depend on the powder as well, how those changes are going to interact. So typically what I do is I usually start with published data and especially when you're starting out, I would say look at all the published data, kind of come up with a consensus on what your starting load is going to be and what your overall length is going to be, and then kind of go with that. So that's pretty much what I have done with this. I have looked at a variety of different data sources for those two things and then decided what I was going to do based off of that. And that's what I tell you guys is, hey, at the end of the day, you know, what I do might not work for you. So you have to kind of look at all the data out there and figure out what is best for you. We have our bullet seating die set up here in the Lee hand pressed, so we are ready to go and go ahead and get these loaded. I have the exact length there that I want. Now, of course, because there are going to be differences with, for instance, variances in manufacture and stuff, you know, just like whenever we measure these up, there was whatever it was, a hundredth of a difference there between lengths or whatever. That's going to happen. That's just the way it is. It's never going to be exactly perfect. I'm sure there's a lot of bench rest shooting guys out there that, you know, they get real precise on stuff, and they can. But a lot of this, when you're just loading regular rounds, you can go ahead and expect there's going to be 100th or 1,000th difference in overall lengths and different things probably between the cases and stuff. And, well, that's just the way it is. So we'll go ahead, and you can see here, it's pretty easy to seat our bullets, no problem at all. Very simple. It doesn't require, you know, a lot of force or anything like that. And as I mentioned, whenever I dropped the last video in the description, using this Lee hand press has reminded me how easy it is actually to use this and how convenient it is. And it doesn't take up much space, and it's simple to use. And yes, you do get a little more of a workout, I guess, using it. So that is one thing. But and yes, of course, you know, something like a progressive press is going to be able to match that. Yeah, obviously not. But what it has reminded me using this, because I haven't really used it to load up anything for years now. I've been using my other bench mounted presses, is that in the future, you know, like let's say I wanted to load up 138 specials or something. You know, my other presses are busy with other different jobs going on. Well, in that case, I can just go ahead and get my hand press out, and you know, time-wise, it doesn't really take much time to do all this. If you look at the amount of time I have to load what amounts to 2 boxes, you know, it's going to be less than an hour, I think, in total. You know, I'm probably spending more time filming and telling you guys about it than anything. So that's one part. The other thing too here is I did go a little bit crazy, and I loaded up 40 of them. Typically with my starting loads, like let's say you're new at this and you don't have much experience loading this load or this powder or this bullet or whatever it might be. One thing that I can kind of recommend is, you know, maybe start out with like 10 or 20 for whatever load that you decide on for your starting load. Now this one here, the bullet is a little bit wonky there, so I'm going to have to watch this here. But there we go. Let's get you. Whoop, fell off there. Let's get you set up good. There we go. That should be better. Of course, with that one, but we got it. So what was I saying? So what if you don't have like a chronograph and stuff like that too? That's another thing. So in the next video, whenever we go out to the range, after we do the crimping in this video, the next video will be about what do we do with if we don't have a chronograph? How do we go ahead and you know, figure out our load, and because we don't have that data and all that stuff, what do we have to go on? And you know, obviously you want to be safe and all that good stuff and everything. So we'll go through that in the next video. But typically, if you were just starting out with the load, you would maybe load 10 or 20. And then you would, if you have a chronograph, you could use it fine. If you didn't, then I'll tell you kind of what I do in the next video if I didn't have one. For several years I didn't have one whenever I started out. The first thing when you're doing your starting load is to kind of look for function. And does the round actually chamber? And also, too, we will test all these with our case gauge, too. I'll go over that as well at the end here. Basically look for function and how it all works. And then also, too, you can test for accuracy. And you just kind of work through all those different data points until you settle on what your load's going to be. And with this load right here with Titegroup, it shouldn't be all that hard because the starting load is 4.4 for most of the data I have and 4.8 for the final load. So you don't have much variance in there to play around with like you might with a rifle cartridge or something. So it shouldn't be that too damn hard to do. So anyways, I'll get finished seating all these and then we'll move on to crimping. Okay, folks, so we have our Lee factory crimp die set up in our hand press here. Now, you can also set up your bullet seating die to crimp if you so choose. A lot of the Lee sets come with the factory crimp die. A lot of people kind of debate it up and down. The one thing with the factory crimp die is it has a carbide sizing ring. So any cases that for whatever reason, maybe the resizing process kind of missed them a little bit or whatever the school of thought is, or for instance, whenever you expand a case and you kind of have that belled case mount there, that the Lee factory crimp die can come back in there and kind of smooth all that out. And at the end of the day, over the years of using it, it works. Now, having said that, I've also used a separate Reading crimp die for 9mm, and in the end have gotten the same results as using the Lee factory crimp die. So it's one of those things where you'll see a lot of debate online between people totally against using it, totally for using it, whatever. Basically use whatever works best for you. I'm using it here, so that's what we'll just go ahead and do. I also have this set up for pretty much just a light crimp as well, so no big crimp or anything like that. Whoops, sorry there. And with 45 ACP, we don't need to do a real heavy crimp, so just something to be aware of with that. It's kind of a little bit hard to do this on camera, but anyway, so we'll go ahead and get all these crimped, and then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and check them. Actually, I already have some right here that I've done, so we can go ahead and do it right now. This is one thing I have talked about. I did a video on it, which irritated a couple people, which a lot of times it's not bad to irritate a few people out there. But I did a video called Why 380 Sucks and Why You Should Always Case Gauge All of Your Ammo. And there's a lot of debate about case gauge versus an ammo checker and all this other stuff. At the end of the day, I just use a case gauge. You can get out there in the weeds online debating the difference. At the end of the day, if you put a round in the case gauge and it basically is nice and flat and clear across there and doesn't stick out on the other side, then you are good to go. And for most of us with loading just basic, target ammunition and stuff, that's all we need to be concerned about. If it doesn't fit into your case gauge, it could be there's some issue where the case perhaps is buckled. It's maybe getting to a point where it might be failing soon. It's just wearing out, whatever. For whatever reason, maybe the bullet got seated kind of at a wonky angle. Could be a lot of different stuff. And I find typically with 9mm, whenever I'm reloading that, I would say maybe about 1 out of every 200 rounds fails that case gauge. Sometimes more, maybe 2. It just depends. But typically, that's what I find. Maybe about 1% or less will fail the case gauge. And the thing is with this is that it's always a wise idea, in my opinion, that any ammo that you produce, you should check it in one of these. At the end of the day, like this one I bought years ago, this Lyman one 10 years ago, it's like $20. They've gone up a little bit in price, but not that much. And you can find them in any of the common calibers. You can find a case gauge for it. Lyman makes them, Hornady makes them, a couple other small machining companies make them, like Sheridan. Some of their case gauges are pretty good. And it's a no-brainer to have one of these, even if you're just starting out reloading. The other thing too is that pretty much it'll probably last forever. The other thing to check for as well when you are using these is that sometimes there's maybe little pieces of brass or other things that end up on the side of the case. So if you do have one fail the case gauge, one of the things I'll do is I'll just take it out and I will take like a ramrod swab like this and just swab it in there and just make sure there's no debris in there that's causing you the issue, where it's not the ammo, it's just some crap has gotten in there. So periodically you do need to kind of just clean these. I usually use M Pro 7. These ramrods, go to my Amazon store down below, and you'll find them in one of the sections there. And these ramrods are awesome. These are 45 ACP ones. But just keep your case gauge clean. That's about it. And so yes, I find checking all your ammo with these, it's a big help, because I don't have failures. Once I have my load set and I have, started making all my ammo, and I go out there and I shoot it out there and I go to matches and stuff like that, I don't have ammo failures. And the thing is, with a lot of guys I see that go to some of these matches and stuff, is they're constantly racking one round out of the chamber after another, especially the guys that are shooting 1911s. And I ask them, I'm like, do you check your ammo in a case gauge or an ammo checker, whatever, I don't care. Do you check your frickin' ammo? And they're like, no. Okay. So that could go some way to explaining what their issues are. Perhaps they've belled the case excessively, and they're not doing away with that bell by crimping enough, or using the Lee factory crimp die, or whatever it might be that they're having a problem there. They're not picking up on that and basically checking their ammo to find out that they're having issues. Anyway, so a little bit of a rant there, but save yourself some trouble and just get one of these. So what we're going to do, folks, in the next video is we'll go ahead and we'll finish crimping all these. We'll go out to my range, and we'll go ahead and start testing them out and see what results we come out with. And I'll also talk about, if you don't have the money for a chronograph and you're just trying to get started reloading and just do a couple things, we'll talk about that as well, basically how I do it and what I look for, and that'll be the name of the game for the next video. So anyways, folks, hope you all are enjoying this and getting some good information out of it, and we'll see you all next time. Also, too, make sure you hit the like button down below, and if you can, leave a comment. I do appreciate that, and also subscribe to the channel. That helps too. All right, folks, next time.